alarm on the detention deck screamed before I even reached the door, and my hands were shaking as I pressed them against the cold scanner. 3 guards lay on the floor of the holding block, not dead, but not moving either. Smoke curled from a broken panel. And in the center of it all stood the human they called the Devourer, chains hanging broken from his wrists, his eyes calm in a way that made my chest tighten. My name is Lyra Vantos, and I was sent to this outpost to study him, not to save him. But that morning, everything changed. I had read his file 100 times before I ever saw his face. Every word in it was meant to frighten. He had walked away from battles that destroyed entire fleets. He had survived weapons built to erase a person from existence. The Coalition called him a threat to galactic peace. Other species whispered his name like a curse. I expected a beast wrapped in human skin. What I found, 3 weeks earlier, was a quiet man sitting alone in a metal cell, staring at his hands like he did not recognize them. "You're the scientist," he said, without looking up. "The one who's supposed to figure out what's wrong with me." I did not answer right away. I had prepared questions, scans, tests. Instead, I found myself asking something simple. "Are you dangerous?" He looked up then, and his eyes were not the eyes of a monster. They were tired. "Only when someone tries to hurt the people I care about," he said. "Otherwise, I just want to be left alone." His name was Callum Ashford, and for 3 weeks I visited him every day. I brought him books, though he barely touched them. I asked him about Earth, about his family, about the war that made him what he was. He answered some questions and stayed silent on others. Slowly, the file in my hands stopped matching the man in front of me. Then came the message that changed everything. A courier ship arrived at the outpost carrying representatives from the Talvith Assembly, a powerful group within the Coalition who believed Callum was too dangerous to exist freely. They did not come to negotiate. They came to collect what they called a weapon. I was in the observation room when their leader, a tall figure named Director Rask, addressed the outpost commander. "The subject will be transferred to a containment facility," Rask said, his voice flat and final. "Permanently." "On what grounds?" I asked, stepping forward before I could stop myself. Rask barely looked at me. "He destroyed an entire strike fleet without authorization. He is a risk the galaxy cannot afford." Rasked, "That fleet attacked a refugee convoy," I said. "He protected civilians." "I have the records." "Records can be adjusted," Rask said simply, and I understood then that the truth did not matter to him. Only control did. That night, I could not sleep. I pulled every report I could find about the battle Rask mentioned. What I discovered made my hands cold. Callum had not attacked first. He had been guarding a convoy of families fleeing a war zone when an unmarked fleet opened fire without warning. He held the line alone for 6 hours until help arrived. 11,000 civilians survived because of him. The galaxy did not fear him for what he had done wrong. They feared him because he had proven that no weapon they built could stop him from protecting the people he chose to protect. I went to his cell before dawn. "They're taking you," I told him. "Tomorrow." He nodded slowly, as if he already expected it. "It happens every few years. Someone decides I'm too much of a risk to leave alone. They lock me somewhere quiet until they need me again. Doesn't that make you angry?" He almost smiled. "Anger doesn't fix anything. I stopped expecting fairness a long time ago." I sat down across from him, the cold floor pressing through my uniform. "What happened to you before all this?" For the first time, he told me everything. His homeworld had been targeted by an experimental weapon meant to wipe out an entire population in seconds. He was the only one near the testing site who survived, because of an accident during an early defense trial that changed something inside him permanently. He did not ask for power. He woke up with it, surrounded by the ashes of everyone he had ever known. "After that," he said quietly, "I decided I would never let it happen to anyone else. If I could stop it, that's all this ever was. Not conquest, not anger, just making sure no one else wakes up alone like I did." I realized then that the galaxy had not created a monster. It had created someone who refused to let tragedy repeat itself, and then punished him for being strong enough to keep that promise. The next morning, guards arrived to move him to a transport ship. Rask stood at the docking bay with a squad of enforcers, weapons ready, as if a peaceful man required an army to escort him. I walked straight past the guards and stood beside Callum. "Step aside," Rask ordered. "No," I said. The enforcers raised their weapons slightly. Callum shifted, just barely, positioning himself half a step in front of me without a word. Even now, even facing his own capture, his first instinct was to protect someone else. You have no authority here, Rask said to me, his patience thinning. I have every authority, I answered. I am the lead researcher assigned to this case, and I am telling you, on record, that your report on the convoy incident is false. I have the original flight logs. I have witness testimony from the survivors themselves. If you take him today, I will make sure every council member sees the truth before the sun sets. Rask's expression flickered, just slightly. This does not concern you. It does, I said, and my voice did not shake this time. Because I have spent 3 weeks with this man, and I have seen exactly who he is. Not the file, not the rumors, him. The docking bay went silent. Even the guards seemed uncertain now, glancing between their director and the two of us standing together. Rask took a step closer, his voice lowering to something almost threatening. You would risk your career, your reputation, everything, for a weapon that isn't even from your world? I looked at Callum. He was watching me with an expression I had not seen from him before, something between disbelief and quiet hope, like he could not quite believe someone was standing beside him instead of behind a locked door. I turned back to Rask. He's mine, I said, my responsibility, my research, my decision, and I say he stays. The words hung in the air, simple but absolute. Rask stared at me for a long moment, calculating, searching for a way around what I had said. But the truth was already out, spreading through the outpost's communication network as I spoke, reaching council members who would not ignore hard evidence once it reached them. Rask's jaw tightened. He knew he had lost the moment, even if he refused to admit it out loud. This is not finished, he said, before turning sharply and walking back toward his ship, his enforcers following in silence. When the docking bay finally cleared, I let out a breath I did not know I had been holding. My legs felt unsteady, but I stayed standing. Callum turned to face me fully for the first time since the confrontation began. You didn't have to do that, he said softly. I know, I answered. They could have come after you instead. I know that too. He studied me for a long moment, and something in his expression softened, the tension in his shoulders easing for what looked like the first time in years. Why? He asked. After everything you read about me, after everything they told you, why stand beside me instead of walking away? I thought about the file I had first received, filled with warnings and fear. I thought about the quiet man who barely touched his books but always asked how I was doing before answering my questions. I thought about a person who had lost everything and chosen, again and again, to protect strangers instead of turning away from the galaxy that feared him. Because monsters don't protect convoys for 6 hours while outnumbered, I said. Monsters don't ask permission before defending themselves. And monsters definitely don't look this uncertain when someone finally treats them like a person instead of a weapon. For the first time since I had met him, Callum laughed, quiet and surprised, like the sound itself felt unfamiliar to him. I've been called a lot of things, he said. Nobody's ever called me uncertain. Get used to it, I said. I plan on sticking around. Word of the confrontation spread quickly across the outpost, and within days, the true records of the convoy battle reached the wider coalition council. Public opinion, once shaped entirely by fear, began to shift as more people learned the real story behind the man they had called a monster for so long. Rask never returned, though I heard through official channels that his claims were formally rejected once the evidence was reviewed. Callum remained at the outpost, no longer as a prisoner, but as something closer to a partner in my research, and eventually, something closer to family. Sometimes, late at night, he would find me in the observation deck, staring out at the stars the way he used to stare at his own hands. Do you ever regret it? He asked once. Standing up for me that day? I looked at him, at the calm in his eyes that no longer needed to hide anything. Not for a second, I said. The galaxy can call you whatever it wants. I know exactly what you are. And what's that? He asked. I smiled. Mine. He did not argue.